For the cover, we're using medium weight chipboard, and the cutting guide lists the 5 pieces that we will need for the cover. The first thing I'm going to do is to punch some holes in my spine piece to allow for the screws for my handle. Now, in the cutting guide, it tells you that this handle can't be any more than 1 inch tall, minus 7/8. That's preferable, but no more than 1 inch tall. And mine measures 2.5 inches from the 2 screws. Yours may differ, so just use mark your spine accordingly. And then for me, I need to use the larger 3/16 side of my crocodile to punch the holes, and so I'll do that next. So here's my spine piece with the holes punched in it. And the next thing we want to do is to take our closure piece. It's cut slightly smaller, it's only 1.25 inches wide, and on the closure we want to add a couple of magnets. Now I've marked center coming in across, which would be 5/8, and then up 1 inch from either, or in 1 inch from either end, and that'll be the center for my magnets. You may also be able to read here that I wrote the word outside on here. It's important to remember that the magnets go on the outside of the closure. So I'll get my 2 magnets installed next. And if you don't have adhesive backed magnets, make sure you put some glossy accents on your magnets and let them dry thoroughly. Next, we'll use some Tyvek to reinforce where we're going to hinge our pieces together. I've cut 2 pieces at 1 1/8, and those will go down here at the closure end, and I have 2 pieces that I cut 1 1/4, and these will go around the main spine. I also just blackened in the center part of these pieces, because for the spine only 1/4 inch will show in the center, and on the end only 1/8 will show. So now I'm going to start by prepping to put in my main spine, and I'll put 1/2 inch score tape on either side of the spine and on one end of each of the main side pieces. So I'll go ahead and get that prepped. So here's my spine assembly, and you can see I've run my score tape here. It's on the 6-inch side of the covers, and then I'm just going to take a piece of my Tyvek, make sure I put the black side facing down, and line up one edge with one end of the score tape and the other edge with the other end of the score tape. And because these are cut at 1 1/4 and we used 1/2 inch score tape here, we should end up with a 1/4 inch channel in between. Now as I go to put this second side on, I'm going to use a line on my mat here to make sure that everything is staying in alignment. Next, I'll add my end piece using one of the 1 1/8 inch pieces of Tyvek. Again, it goes with the black side facing down, and I've prepped with 1/2 inch score tape here. So I'll go ahead and get the end piece attached. And finally, we'll put the closure on, and this is the outside where we're seeing all this white side of the Tyvek here. And so that's the side with the magnets that's going to get attached here. So I'll run a strip of score tape along one edge with the magnets. There doesn't need to be another piece on the other end. And then I'll attach this last piece of Tyvek, lining that so that we get another 1/8 inch gap here. And then once you get all of those pieces in a row, go ahead and give your Tyvek a good burnish. So now we're ready to put the matching magnets on the inside of the front cover, and you can see I've stuck a piece of white cardstock in here. When I'm going to draw a line that is on this Tyvek that is the same width as our closure piece, which is 1.25 inches, and the reason I'm doing that is that we want that front cover to, when we put the magnets on, to line up exactly with the end of the closure. Now that's very faint, but I can see it. So that I will take this piece and I'll put my magnets in there, but I will, when I put it down, I will use that line that I just drew, and I can also peek in here from the side and see the end of that closure. So just put a couple of pieces of scrap cardstock in here. Your magnets should naturally, this one wants to go there, I've got two different ones. They should naturally seek their other side. If you don't have self-adhesive magnets, put a little drop of glossy accents on there, and then go ahead and close it up. And if you are using adhesive like glossy accents, make sure you allow that to dry before you pull it apart. And then finally, for the magnets on this end, I just punched some 1 1/4 inch circles of cardstock that I can glue on here just to make sure these magnets won't come up. These down here are going to get covered with paper, so we don't have to worry about that. So just these two on the cover end. To finish off the spine area, I've cut a piece of black cardstock that is 3 by 7 1/4, and I've backed it with score tape, as you can see here. And I'm just going to center it right here, top to bottom and left to right. If, you know, in a perfect world, these would be right on, but it's not perfect and it's okay. So I'm just going to remove my backing and put that in place there. And be careful because these ends will be sticky, so don't get them stuck to your table. And now I've flipped it over, and what I want to do is cut off some of this excess here, and I'll show you. I'm going to cut just even with the spine and straight out, and then I'm going to come right along the edge of the covers here, and I should get a little square out on each side. So I'll repeat that. And then I'm just going to use my bone folder to wrap that to the inside. So I'll just encourage it to come up even with that edge first, and then gradually just turn my bone folder until I can put it down on the inside. I'll give that a good burnish, and then I'll repeat that over here on this other side, just cutting it exactly even with the spine piece, cutting out the corners and then wrapping it towards the spine. And once we have those ends on, we can just kind of encourage it to bend along those areas there where we have the Tyvek and the cardstock. Now that we have our spine completed, we can work on the closure end, and for here I've cut a piece that's 5 by 7 1/4, and when I install this piece I'll again center it up and down, and I'm just going to use my mat to make sure I have it my unit straight here. And what I want to do is align that with the edge of this piece of Tyvek here, so that it hangs out over here about 1.5 inches. So I have that cardstock stuck down there, and I'm just going to flip it over, and I've got some, I'm just going to use a piece of the tape backing that I removed to kind of protect this end over here so it doesn't stick to things prematurely. Now the only things that we want to leave tabs to wrap are the two pieces, the end piece and the closure piece. So I'm going to cut some little tabs off of here, and then I think it'll be easier to see once I've actually done it. So here's what I've cut. I've come across here and cut out this corner so that this end here is even with the end piece of chipboard. And then I've cut out a little slot, 1/8 inch slot here where the piece of Tyvek is. And then I've cut straight out from, or a little bit of an angle here on the end, and then I cut straight across here. Now the only things I'm going to fasten down at this point are the two tabs. And I'll just use my bone folder and fasten them down like I did before. So now I've got this end wrapped, and I'll just repeat that cutting and wrapping on this side, still leaving this tab out here at the end. So now here I am at this point, and I'm just going to take my bone folder, and I'm leaving the score tape backing on this tab at the end for now, and just kind of training it to fold and go around this side, because we're probably going to need to trim it off a little bit, but it is hard to tell exactly how big to make this piece until we get it in place. So I'm just kind of going around this edge here, getting a nice crisp edge. And then I can see mine is overhanging here, about 1/8 of an inch. So what I'll do is I'll make a couple of tick marks so that I can cut it off evenly so it'll fit right to the edge of this last piece of the closure chipboard here. So now I've trimmed my piece to length here, and I can remove my score tape backing and just use my bone folder to get that in place and get a nice clean edge there, and finally put it down so that we have that final closure piece has a nice finish of black cardstock all the way around. Make sure you burnish in these channels as well as everywhere else, and then just kind of gently fold on these things until it comes back and forms right angles here. So now we have those pieces of black cardstock on, and our case comes around nicely, and next we'll work on the pockets. The next pieces we'll work on are called the inside covers in the cutting guide. They measure 7 1/4 by 8 1/4, and they go inside of the covers and they form pockets that the book block can slide into, and they also trim the edges of the covers. So just like with the other pieces, I have a piece of white here just so maybe you can see it more easily than on the black. So I'm going to start out with the 8 1/4 side on top. I have the 8 1/4 side along here at the top, and on one end I'm going to score at 1/2 and then at 5/8, and then I'll flip it around. I still have my 8 1/4 on the top, and on the other end I'm only going to score 1/2. So the first end had both 1/2 and 5/8, and the other end only has 1/2. Now we'll turn it so that we have our 7 1/4 inch at the top, and we'll score at 1/2 inch and then 5/8 inch, and we'll flip it so that it's still 7 1/4 inch on the top, but on the other side we'll again do a 1/2 inch and 5/8. So I'm going to do my creasing. I've zoomed in so you can get a better idea of the cutting on the corners here. This is my 1/2 inch only over here. All the other ones have the 1/2 inch and 5/8 inch scoring. And on the two corners that have 5/8, this is similar to how we did the pockets on the inside, where we cut straight across for the 1/8 and then at the 45-degree angle. I did that in this corner as well. And then on the two corners that are near the 1/2 inch, I angled back a little bit. They only get cut and then it's cut right along the 1/8 inch up here. So don't cut into this point here. It's just that stays there. It's basically, instead of just cutting out that corner, you're angling it in a little bit, and do that on the other side as well. And now I'll change to the black cardstock pieces. So this is my piece of black cardstock that I've done all my scoring and creasing on, and I've also added score tape. But unlike the pockets that we installed on the book block, this time the score tape gets on the ends that are folding under. And that's because this is going to slide over the book cover, and you'll see in a second how it goes on. So I've put on all of the tabs, I've put 3/8 inch score tape. And there's one other thing I want to do before we install this, and that is, this is the side that has just the 1/2 inch tab. I've got a piece of Tyvek that I've cut to 6 1/4, and this is in the cutting guide. And I'm going to install that just on the inside of that crease there. And it should overlap both of the 1/8 inch channels on the ends. So I'll go ahead and get that attached. I just have some score tape on the back of it, and I'll put it in so that this end can easily fold, and don't worry if a little bit of this is extra, because it's going to be on the inside. So I have my piece of Tyvek installed, and now I'm going to release the backing from this 1/2 inch tab and fold that in. And go ahead and give that a really good burnish. You also probably want to make sure that this 1/8 inch channel is folding on both of these ends, where it's kind of double thickness now. So I'm just using the corner of my bone folder there to make sure that that's going to fold around on the ends. And now I'll get the cover. So I brought back my piece of white paper so you can see what's going to happen here. I have already folded this edge under just like we just did. And these channels, I've got the inside of the book here, and this is the inside of the front cover. Way over at this end is my closure. And so this goes around, the tabs go around, because this is the inside, so that on the outside we have this kind of action going on. Now the end of the cover should meet the end of the chipboard on the inside. So just release your tape backing and put it on. You should have the channel should be sitting even with the edge and with extra space towards the inside, so that the book block will easily slip in there. So I just took my handy dandy clothespins and I lined up that edge with the end of my chipboard here, and I'm ignoring these two tabs on the sides for right now. I'm going to start by putting the end tab down, and once I have that in place I can release my clothespins and put the other sides on. So now I have my pocket installed here on the front. If I slip in this piece of scrap cardstock, you can see there's a pocket right here. So now we're ready to turn our attention to the back cover. This one we have to do a little differently, because we can't wrap the edge around because there is no edge on this side. So here what we'll do is we'll again make our fold, and then on these two tabs that are the horizontal tabs, we'll put our score tape on the side so that it can wrap around. But on this end down here, what we'll end up doing is just folding it on the 5/8 inch line, and we'll put score tape on this side and put it down. So let me get the black piece out. I think it might be easier to see that with the black cardstock. So here's my black cardstock for the inside back cover. I still notched all my corners the same way, but as you can see here, this is the side that's folding in. I have put the score tape on that side here, but this is the side that's going to fold under and get attached. You can see I put the score tape over there. Now here, this is my 1/2 inch tab that I'll add my Tyvek to reinforce that and put that down. So I'll get that piece prepped, and then I'll be back to install it on the cover. So now I'm ready to install my back inside cover. Remember, the opening will go towards the spine here. So I've got this piece that I'm going to attach down, and I put a piece of white cardstock here. I butted it up right against the end of the chipboard there so I can see where I want to go. And I'll just open up these flaps here, and I'll remove that score tape backing on this end piece first and put that down, and then put the tabs down like I did before. So I have this tab attached, and I just want to give it a really good burnish here before I go ahead and fold this down and align my sides with the end of my chipboard here and install the two side tabs. Now that we have our pockets attached, we can go ahead and see if we need to trim the ends of our book block that stick in the pockets, or if they're going to be a good fit as they are. So this is just, I'm trying the back one in here first. It'll fit, but it's very snug, so I think I'll take a sliver off both the top and the bottom of this flap, and just take like one at a time and see how it fits. And then I'll test this end as well, and you want it to be snug, but obviously not forcing these pieces. So I'll do my trimming, and then I'll be back. So I trimmed just a sliver off of both the top and the bottom, and I found it easy to do just with these big shears. You just have to be careful to guide so that you're only taking a sliver at a time, so that you get the proper fit. And then when you want to put the book in and get both sides in, you have to turn it kind of inside out, and then you have to slide in basically both sides at once. So just lift up one side and get the other side in, and then you can just push it down and get it centered in that spine, and then you'll be able to close it up. So now I have the book block centered in that spine. and then I can close it around it, and you can see how this is going to fit in there. Now for some decorative paper, or at least some paper, because this black cardstock isn't too decorative. But anyway, I'm going to start out here in the inside, and this piece of black cardstock is for the end piece. This is the one that we have the two tabs on. So it's cut 1.5 inches wide by just a little shy of 6 inches. You can see here that I've cut it 5 15/16. I've just backed that with some score tape, and I'll install that right there. This end is already finished. And then for the insides, on the inside cover, the pockets, I've cut 2 pieces of decorative paper, and I'm just leaving a little reveal here. See if I can stick that in the pocket. You can see I've got about 1/8 of an inch reveal all the way around with these dimensions, but feel free to cut them any size you want for the reveal that you like. So the dimensions I'm using here on the inside are 5 3/4 inches tall by 6 7/8 wide, 5 3/4 tall by 6 7/8 wide, and I've put score tape around the outside edge, and then I'll just fill in with some ATG adhesive in the centers here before I stick it down. So I'll get these inside pieces done, and then I'll be back. So for the outside, for the spine, I've cut this piece, and it is 1 7/16 by 5 7/8. And again, you know, whatever reveal that you like here. So that was 1 7/16 by 5 7/8. And then I have 2 pieces of this red, and one I'll go ahead and put on the back and just get it centered there in the back. And I've cut this, both of them 5 7/8 tall by 7 inches wide. So I'll put the back piece on. That's the piece that has the end flaps here, but I'm going to reserve the piece for the front because I'm going to do something special on the front. And again, with these pieces, I've prepped with score tape on the outside, and then I'll fill in with a bunch of ATG adhesive in the centers. For the front of my album, I'm going to do some judicious fussy cutting of this feature paper from the 8x8 pad, and come up with an element that will fit on the front of the album. Now you can put whatever you want on the front of the album. The key is that if you are putting it inside of the Enchanted Castle, it has to be flat. It can't be more than the paper thick. You can't put any embellishments on it. Now if you're not making the castle and it's not going inside of the castle, feel free to do whatever you want on the front because the thickness won't matter then, of course. So I'm going to start this by, in the materials guide, it calls for a piece of 8x8 Stick-It. This is the Stick-It product. It's a very thin adhesive, paper-backed adhesive that is made for die cuts and electronic cutting machines, but I find that if I'm going to do some fussy cutting and put something down, that it works perfectly for that as well. So I'm going to start by cutting an 8x8 piece of this and putting it on the back of my feature paper here. So I have the Stick-It product applied to the back, and I did a good burnish on that. And the next thing I want to do is cut out, I'm going to cut out a square here, and I'm going to cut on the outside of these black diamonds and go all the way around, just going on the outside of those black diamonds. So now I have this square, and I did take just a little corners out of the circle emblems on the outside here so that my paper is square. So now I want to make a 45-degree cut from the inside here, just where these little dots are on this border, and from that corner out to the outside corner on the bottom right, and then again on the bottom left. Now I'm going to make 2 vertical cuts, and they're going to be on these edges here. I'm going to leave the little cream colored dots that are right here on that border and cut just inside them. And on the right side, I'm going to come up just about to where this element is. I don't know what to call it. It looks kind of like a comma, and the bottom part is green and the top part is yellow. So I'm going to start my cut kind of even with that, staying on the inside of those dots, and come all the way down to where I just made that cut in the corner right there. Don't cut this off, just come right to that point on the inside border. So that you can see, here's my cut. It's up here with this comma, and I've come down here and I've got a diagonal hanging off. Now I want to do something similar over here on the left. There's an oval around this lady, and coming up out of the oval there's a red flower here, and it kind of follows back along, kind of a goldish kind of element that's right next to the border. And at the top of that is where I'll start my cut. I'll again leave the little dots attached to my border and come down until I meet this little 45-degree cut down here. So up here by the red flower, down here to the corner. So here's that cut on the left side. And now I'm just going to do some cutting along in here, but I think it'll be easier if I just make the cut first and then kind of show it to you. So here's my fussy cutting. I came in on the right and went above that comma plume, and then down a little bit, and then followed the plume of the knight in shining armor's helmet here. It kind of curved around there, came around the edge of his helmet, and then around the front of his shield here, came down and just kind of followed the outline there, then around this fairy's wings and around her arm a little bit, then kind of followed some flowers down here. It's basically underneath the skirt of this, or whatever this blue stuff is up here. I'm calling it the skirt of this fairy, around this flower. And then I'm kind of just, there's a orange decorative thing here that I followed, and then kind of just came up to the oval where the castle meets the oval. Now I didn't try to do all of these pointy things on the castle. You can leave some of them if you want. And then I just followed her arm up and around her body. Came around her body and then up the edge of this stem of the red flower over here until I met the edge. And then I used antique linen distress marker on the cut edges here. You don't need to worry about the cut edges at the top. They're going to get covered up. And then wherever there's black on a cut edge, like on this edge on either side and on the frame edge, I used a black marker on that so that we wouldn't see any white paper, but you definitely don't want to use black on the edges here. It'll show up too much, so that antique linen will knock that white off. So that's the fussy cutting. So now I have my two pieces that I fussy cut and my red polka dot background. And what I want to do is set this on the background and just see how much of the red is showing from left to right. It's about a 1/16 of an inch, maybe a little bit more. And then I'll put that much red up here at the top. And once I do that, I'll make a tick mark where I want to cut this off at the bottom, so that I have the same amount of reveal on the bottom that I do on the top. Now when I cut this off, I'm just going to cut it at a slight angle back. And I'll do the same thing on the other side. Get this even here at the top where I can see it. Probably turn it this way so I can see it better. And then I can make a mark down here where I need to cut that off. You might not be able to see that, but I can. And I'll just cut this back at a slight angle. So now I have these two bottom ends cut off at a slight angle. I also went around the outside perimeter here with my black marker. And now I'm ready to, this is the top piece, I'm ready to go ahead and adhere it down. I'll keep an eye on my reveal and my corners down here so that I get it on straight and have that same amount of reveal all the way around. Now I've stuck some release paper behind this last section, and before I stick it down, I want to make sure that I'm staying straight and parallel here, because you know this piece has to fit right back inside of there. So I'm just taking a moment to make sure that it's going to, and then I can go ahead and stick that last piece down. Now that we have this piece on, let's go ahead and give it a good burnish. Now we could do a dry fit with this piece. We'll see our same reveal down here at the bottom. Now if your sides got away from you a little bit before you put this, and you can see a little red here, just take your black marker and carefully go on the inside there on either side so that it won't peek through. But hopefully you won't have that issue. And then these corners will go right down here so that we should get some nice mitered action going on. And we'll just remove our release paper and put this part of the image in place. And before you put this in place, make sure you take a black marker on the bottom edge, and if you haven't already done it, on the two side edges here. And then once you get that in place, go ahead and carefully burnish these edges down. And now we can go ahead and add that to the front of our album. I already had prepped this with some score tape around the edges, and I'll just add some ATG in the middle and go ahead and put that on the front of the mini. And then we can take our awl and go through the decorative paper in these holes that we punched for our handle, and go ahead and insert the screws from the inside and tighten down our handle. And once you have the handle on, you could go ahead and slip the book block in and close it up and go try it out in the castle. Now be careful, it's a tight fit, so watch your edges as you come in and out. I hope you've enjoyed constructing this project, or just seeing how it all came together. This is April with Craft Knife Chronicles. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.